Hey, what's going on, No Nation? CJ Wilson here with DoakTalk. Of course, I am your host. We have your new edition of Behind Enemy Lines, and it's going to be an interesting one as FSU kicks off ACC play on the road against the Virginia Cavaliers, who are flying really high on offense. Wanted to give you guys a good episode for this one, so I reached out to Greg Madia, University of Virginia beat writer at the Daily Progress. Greg, how's it going?
Yeah, CJ, good to be with you. Thanks for having me on. It's good, it already can kind of start to feel the buzz for Friday night. It's the first big game in Charlottesville in a while. So that's exciting for Virginia fans and for people who follow the Who's here in Central Virginia.
Most definitely. I was going to ask you that as well. What's the buzz around town, around campus? 3-1. I'm going to get into that in a second as far as just the job that Tony Elliott has done. But 3-1, Virginia Cavaliers offense is flying really high. A home game Friday night, real electric atmosphere. And then of course you have Florida State, who we have a storied history with Virginia going back to the early '90s and playing at Virginia. So what's the buzz around campus for this game?
Yeah, I think it's pretty ramped up. I mean, all things considered, right? This Virginia team, not a lot of expectations the last couple of years, and they've kind of been trying to find themselves under Tony Elliott. But beginning December, January after last season ended, Virginia really made a heavy push into the transfer portal. They got an influx of private donations, which is always nice when you're trying to build a roster in this day and age. And they made priority being the offensive line, the defensive line, and quarterback. And I think that's what you're seeing. The biggest difference is they have some mature, experienced players at those positions who've come in and done a nice job to help enhance the talent on the team and depth of the team. And I think you're seeing there's some star power there too with Chandler Morris, accounted for 5 touchdowns. In this past Saturday's win over Stanford, he's been pretty steady. Last year, he threw for 31 touchdowns at North Texas. He's already thrown for 8 this year with the Cavaliers. It's been a good start for him. They have, like I said, they tried to beef up their O line and their D line a little bit. They've added some players on the perimeter at wide receiver. So they just feel like they're a more ready team to compete in the ACC this season, and that's something that just couldn't be said the last couple of years.
And Greg, you made an interesting point in regards to that. So we're in year 4 of Tony Elliott being the head coach. He's instilling his culture, bringing in his guys, building the program to his liking, right? And as a result, 3-1. Just talk about the job Tony has done over the years to really get to this point to try to instill, his imprint on the program and have his version of Virginia football being shown on display.
Yeah, for sure, and it's been tough. Like the first couple of years were tough, especially because late in his first season they had the tragedy on campus at Virginia, right? The shooting on that resulted in the deaths of 3 players: Lavelle Davis Jr., Devin Chandler, and Deshaun Perry. And I think that kind of set things back a little bit in terms of the build and in terms of the potential progress of the program. There were some things that they had to address in the offseason with different players and figure out who wanted to stay after that, who wanted to go, and on top of that, just from a standpoint when he took over the program too, there was an exodus of offensive linemen who left after Bronco Mendenhall decided to leave. They lost some key defensive players too. So there were a couple of things that made his first couple of years challenging. And Virginia just didn't invest the money it needed to keep those offensive linemen. I'm talking guys like Olu Olawatimi, who went on to be the Remington Award winner when he played at Michigan, and Bobby Haskins, who transferred to USC. Really good players that could have helped him in his first year that left. And that was the kind of the start of the portal era. And Virginia just wasn't up to speed quite yet on what it would take to succeed. So I think they've tried their best to address the offensive line this year. They brought in 7 transfers. The key guy is Brady Wilson, and that's that. He got hurt last week, so that's a little bit of a touch and go situation for UVA. But as far as to get back to your question, Tony's done a good job in not letting kind of the results dictate exactly how he builds his team. There's no simple solution. He was not firing coaches left and right. He's kept his staff intact. It's the same offensive coordinator, same defensive coordinator that's been there with him. It's the same exact staff from last year when they started to show some progress and won 5 games. So I think he's done a lot to try to set the program up for success. But now you're in year 4 and you have to win. And
Right.
and there's a little bit of the shuffle in to get players, right, get better players to produce, and that so far so good. in that department with their first real deep dive into the transfer portal and flip of a roster to see how it goes.
You spoke a little bit about Chandler Morris and how well he has played thus far within the season, within last year as well. Talk about, I guess, what he brings from a culture standpoint. You brought about the playmaking ability. What about the leadership and culture standpoint to kind of lead those guys in the right direction and being that leader and being the forefront of the offense?
Yeah, for sure. I think it's he's the son of a guy who used to coach major college football, right? Chad Morris, former coach at SMU, was previously the offensive coordinator at Clemson when Tony Elliott was the running backs coach there. So Tony and Chandler go way back, right? To when Chandler was a kid running around the football offices at Clemson. So there's built-in trust there, but there's also the seasoned experience in college football with Chandler Morris. Began his career at Oklahoma, transferred to TCU, went through a couple of things with the Horned Frogs. Right, had a couple of injuries where he had won the starting quarterback job, and then suffered some real tough injuries that put him in a tough spot where he wasn't the quarterback anymore. Went to North Texas, regrouped, and had a great season last year. Now he's at Virginia, and it seems like Morris and the offensive coordinator, Des Kitchings, have started to really figure out each other. Morris doesn't mind telling Kitchings, hey, I don't like this play. I don't like this look on third down. Take it out. And Kitchings is like, I love that. A quarterback's able to tell me what he's comfortable with. He's like, I'm not offended if it's not in the game plan. Just don't make me call it if you don't like it. So I think there's that older, just kind of been there, done that in college football. Feel with Chandler Morris, and then he's accomplished, right? What he does on the field, he's an accurate passer. He can throw the deep ball. He can throw for some different arm angles, and he can take off and run and beat you with his feet if he has to.
All right, so he's doing pretty well, but to do pretty well, you got to have some pass catchers that can do some things on the outside, right? If Virginia have some playmakers that they can get the ball to, Trail Harris, Cam Ross, and Jamal Edrin as well. To speak about the receiver room and the electric playmakers that's within that receiver room.
Yeah, all different skill sets, CJ. Edrin is like the big physical possession type of receiver, third
He's from
down.
Florida as well, correct?
What's that?
He's from Florida as well.
Yeah.
If
Oh,
I'm
yeah. 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 He started his career at FAU
Mhm.
before transferring to Purdue and then over to UVA. He's 6'3", looks the part of that big physical wide receiver that every team would love to have on a third down or in the red zone. Trell Harris is just blazing fast, can take the top off of defense. He had 4 catches for 145 yards and 3 touchdowns. Scored all 3 touchdowns in the first quarter this past Saturday against Stanford. So that was an impressive performance for Harris. He was at UVA last year after transferring in from Kent State and started really strong last season before he had some injury issues that kept him out for 8 games, the knee issue. But he seems all fine now and doing really well for the Cavaliers. And then Cam Ross, experienced slot receiver, twitchy, quick, great burst of speed. He's in from James Madison. He started his career at UConn. You'll see him in the slot. You'll see him running all different sorts of routes out of that position, and then also impacting the special teams game. He had a kickoff return for a touchdown in the opener against Coastal Carolina. He had a long punt return against NC State that helped Virginia score before halftime. So he's a good player too. Those three first team wide receivers, they'd probably start anywhere in the country.
Yeah, big time dynamic playmakers. And speaking of the receivers, you have some dynamic running backs as well with Jamari Taylor and Harrison Whaley. To speak about those guys and what they bring to the table with just to balance out with a pretty good quarterback and electric receivers that can make some plays on the outside as well.
Yeah, Virginia 3 straight games with over 200 rushing yards, which that's kind of where they want to start on offense is with the running game. I know Florida State's run the ball really well early this year, but Virginia has too. And I think with Taylor, they kind of found a diamond in the rough, right? He was at North Carolina Central, an FCS school. He walked on there, right? To think about that from FCS walk on to full time starter, clear cut number 1 guy with UVA is quite the story. And I think he's kind of been even better than they expected. They thought he was going to be pretty good and that his skills would translate. He was an 1,000-yard rusher last year for North Carolina Central. But he's been excellent, had 150 yards on the ground against NC State. It's been a positive start for him. Whaley, he was at Wyoming. I'm sorry if you can hear my son screaming in the
Oh, you're
background.
perfectly fine, man. It's all good.
Okay,
Family.
sorry about that. Harrison Whaley, a transfer from Wyoming. He's been good too as a second, third option. Then there's Xavier Brown, who's been around at UVA, and he's capable out of the backfield as a pass catcher. They'll use him in some wide zone and that sort of deal. But Taylor is the clear cut guy. Whaley can get if he can get going, he's pretty good. But I would say Taylor's the one to look out for going into Friday night.
That's the bell cow. We're talking about a pretty elite offense, probably one of the best offenses FSU have faced this year, averaging 45.5 yards a game. I'm hard points per game, excuse me. Speak about the offensive line a little bit. I think you mentioned Wilson. Do we have an update on Wilson in regards to will he be available for this game? And just the other offensive lineman that's around to protect, Chandler with throwing the ball and create holes for these running backs.
Yeah, so calf strain for Wilson. That was the thought Saturday night after the game. Nothing confirmed yet. I'd be surprised. I'd be surprised if we see him Friday night.
All right, got some information on standout center. All right, let's move over to the defensive side of the ball. Before we do that, make sure you guys hit that like button and subscribe to the channel if you haven't. Go ahead and hit that like button. It takes 2 seconds out of your time and subscribe to the DoakTalk community. You'll have a lot of information coming your way, interviews like this with big time guests and Greg Madia. All right, let's go ahead and move on to the defensive line. A few guys that stand out to me: Daniel is it Rickard?
Rickard, yep.
Dan Rickard, my apologies, and Mitchell Melton and Kazim Moore. Some of the guys that stand out on the defensive line has been making some plays. Just speak about that unit and what they bring to the table.
Yeah, they've been trying to figure out how to get the pass rush going a little bit. It was slow to start, and then all of a sudden against Stanford, the floodgates opened up for them. Rickard had two sacks against the Cardinal, and he's another guy from an FCS school that's come up a level and looks really really good. He comes off the bench for UVA. Melton's the starter at that position, a transfer from Ohio State, and he I think, and he was talking to me about this last week, is like at Ohio State, he wasn't an every down player, right? He was a rotational guy. So early this year, he's kind of been getting adjusted to being, a full time player at UVA. And they think he's got a lot of potential. He had a couple of quarterback pressures last week, and then he's got a couple of tackles for loss already, 3.5, I believe. He's someone totally capable. I think on the interior they have a couple of good ones too. Jason Hammond, a defensive tackle. He's from Florida also, so this one's a big one for him. And then Jameer Carter is a sixth-year player. He's been at Virginia forever. In a couple of weeks, he'll make his. I think it's against Louisville. The next week, he'll make his 50th career start as long as he's healthy. So he's been in college football a long time, and just one of those guys who understands his role. Right, he's not going to fill the stat sheet often, but he's going to take on double teams probably 90% of the time, and try to keep the offensive linemen off Cam Robinson and James Jackson. So that's kind of the D-line outlook. But Rickard and Melton are starting to get going, and I think that's what Virginia is really excited about because they're going to have to, right? With Castellanos at Florida State now, Virginia's played him a couple of times already in his career when he was at Boston College, and they've done an okay job containing him. But it's a different offense; it's a different feel for him. So I wonder how much of what they did against BC the last 2 years they'll be able to apply to Friday night. It'll be that to me is one of the fascinating things in this game is because Virginia's D-line has had some success in the past against Castellanos. Can they figure it out with Castellanos and Gus Malzahn's offense? I think that's fascinating.
Yeah, it is a fascinating matchup. It seems like a match made in heaven, a perfect marriage in between in regards to
Yeah.
Castellano and Gus from the early portion we have seen of the season. Let's go to the linebacker room. You spoke about Cam Robinson, who just came back into the lineup. This is a big time playmaker, guy that FSU recruited pretty heavily during his recruiting process. He was pretty much out of FSU and Virginia down the stretch, if I remember correctly.
Yeah.
Landon Daly and James Jackson. Let's talk about that room and getting a big time player like Robinson back into the fold.
Yeah, Robinson's terrific. He just makes up for all the mistakes you can make on defense, right? He's the guy who can chase somebody down and just correct the play if somebody else on defense is out of position. He's that kind of player, always around the ball. He was Virginia's leader in sacks last year. There's something interesting. Jason Hammond was talking to me about one of their defensive tackles was telling me, he's like, I think the pass rush maybe opened up a little bit because all of a sudden offensive lines have to account for Cam Robinson rushing the passer. Virginia lined him up in a first third down situation, kind of as an off the edge player next to the defensive end, and brought him on a blitz. And Hammond was saying, like, you can't not block Cam Robinson, so that gives everybody else one-on-one matchups. So maybe that's why the pass rush opened up a little bit for Virginia. So I think he's that dynamic of a player. And you brought it up. The recruiting thing is so interesting because Virginia was trying like crazy. Just hold on to him, get him to signing day. And Florida State tried its hardest. A rare win, right, for UVA in a recruiting thing against Florida State at that time.
Yeah.
But that was a huge recruiting win for Tony Elliott and his staff. That was their first big win, right? Trying to keep a in-state player at the home school. Robinson wanted to be at Virginia, and Virginia made it happen, right? Even though Florida State gave a made a great run at Robinson. So I'm sure Mike Norvell and that staff are fully aware of all of Cam Robinson's capabilities. James Jackson, veteran player, you kind of know what you get. He's gonna be in position like 95% of the time and come up with a tackle when he needs to. So he's an excellent player. And him and Robinson are a terrific tandem. Danley filled in for Robinson while Robinson was out. I think you'll see him in some situational spots now that Cam's back, but I would expect most of the snaps to be Robinson and Jackson. And then in maybe some third and longs, you'll see Maddox Marcellus transfer from Eastern Kentucky is kind of the speed linebacker if they need somebody else on the field.
All right, let's move on to my favorite position as a former defensive back myself, the secondary. Two guys that stood out to me was Devin Neal and Donovan Platt. Let's talk about the secondary and how they match up against a pretty explosive FSU receiver core.
Yeah, Platt's their best corner. He's in from Army. He was part of that great Army team last year. It was not easy to get out of West Point for him, but managed his way. Managed his way to do so, and Virginia's happy that he did because he's a terrific corner. That safety Devin Neal's been around. He was at Louisville previously. Was at Baylor before that. He's just like another one of those older guys that Virginia brought in to help upgrade their roster and enhance their talent, their depth, their experience. Steady hand there at safety. Virginia's secondary, though, I'll be honest, they've had some issues at times this season. They had some communication issues. They let up a long touchdown against William and Mary. It was 78-yard TD. Last week, they gave up two passes of 60-plus yards against Stanford. And to me, like looking at this Florida State receiving core, I'm thinking you're going to have to get that figured out this week, or that's going to be a big problem. I think CJ, like, and you could probably speak to this better than I can, but with Virginia pulling all these newcomers in their secondary, I feel like that's one spot where just it hasn't quite come together yet. Like guys are still trying to figure out how to play with each other, how to communicate on the fly when offenses move a little bit quicker. I think that's been the one spot that they have some talent back there. They just got to play some more games together. A lot of those guys are like post-spring transfer additions, so they've hardly even had a summer together. So that to me is the one spot where I think it's going to take a little bit more time for Virginia to figure it out.
Yeah, with the secondary, it's a tricky situation, especially when you have guys coming from different schools and privy to different schemes prior to that and learning something totally different. A big communication, especially if you guys didn't have a spring practice to kind of iron out those issues. They're trying to iron out those issues on the fly in the early portion of the season. It's kind of unfortunately carrying over to the season. But yeah,
Yeah,
I agree with you. FSU, they do have some dynamic receivers that can take the top off the defense. So communication definitely have to get fixed for this game if they want to have some success. All right, give me your score prediction for this game. First, give me some few things you feel like Virginia has to do well in order to win this game, and some things they have to avoid, and also what your prediction is outright for this game.
yeah. I think Virginia they got to contain Castellanos. If they don't contain Castellanos, it's going to be it could be a long night. And I'm sure John Rodzinski, the DC, has some stuff pulled up that from the Boston College games the last few years that can work. But I think they're also going to have to be ready for a totally different offense and what exactly Malzahn does. If Castellanos gets going downhill, that would concern me a little bit if you're Virginia. And then also on defense, you got to figure out where that Makai Danzy's going to be every single play. Holy cow, the guy doesn't have that many touches, but has a lot of big plays. It's pretty impactful, pretty impressive for the freshman to watch. So that's a couple on defense. I think on offense, if Wilson can't go, you gotta make sure your communication is clean and all that's ironed out because he's been the one kind of handling all the calls, all the checks. Now they have a veteran group up front. Mikhail Boley and Noah Josie on the left side have played together for the past 3 years, but if Wilson can't go, that means likely Drake Metcalf will play center, and then either Kevin Wigginton, a transfer from Illinois, or Tyshawn Wyatt, a transfer from James Madison, will play right guard, or they'll rotate as the game goes on with a right tackle and Jack Whitmer who was kind of their fourth right tackle option because they had a couple of injuries in the preseason and in spring ball that they got down to that level on the depth chart. So to me, I would be a little concerned if Wilson can't go. You got to make sure that's clean for Friday night. But other than that, if they can keep spreading the ball around on offense like they have, I think they'll at least be able to score enough points. I think it's going to be a high scoring game with these two offenses going like they have. I'm thinking this is probably I don't know, Florida State, I would say 45 ish, Virginia 37, 38, something in that range. I think that's kind of where it's at with how these offenses are going.
Yeah, I'm tending to lean to the agree to you in regards to the offenses putting on the show. But I do think from a, I guess, FSU standpoint, this will be the best and most athletic defense that
Interesting.
Virginia has faced thus far this year. With
Yeah.
that being said, I think FSU gets certain stops. I don't think that the Virginia defense will get enough stops against a pretty explosive offense. So I have it 38-26 FSU prevailing over Virginia. Close game at a certain point, but then the second half, FSU offense a little bit too much. FSU defense gets to stop. Look out for that defensive line for FSU. Really good defensive line is going to be interesting with Wilson probably being out. Greg, it's been a pleasure, man. Really good information. Really enjoyed hanging out with you and learning more about the Virginia Cavaliers. Let the people know where they can find you at.
Yeah, you can follow me at Greg Madia on Twitter, and you can find all the work at the Daily Progress's website, dailyprogress.com. We'll have plenty of Virginia coverage leading up to the game if you want to check in on the opponent for Friday night. I almost said Saturday.
Most definitely. All right. It's a little weird with a Friday night. That's why we kind of want to get this interview a little bit early as well, just to push things up due to it being Friday night. Greg, like I said, it's a pleasure. Make sure you guys like and subscribe to the channel. Go Noles.